Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Titan Alumni Talks, a weekly podcast where we talk to alumni about their experiences at Cal State Fullerton and where they are today. For this week's episode, our guest is William Purpura, who received multiple degrees from CSUF, including a BS in Mechanical Engineering in 1976, an MS in Mechanical Engineering in 1979, and an MBA in 1983. In this episode, we talk about his journey through Cal State Fullerton and why he gives back to the university. Listen to these episodes live on Saturdays at 6 p.m. on titanradio.org, or you can binge them on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/CSUF alumni. So thank you so much, Bill, for joining us on the podcast today.
Well, should be fun.
All right. So one of the first questions I want to ask, you went to Cal State Fullerton some time ago, and I'm just wondering, how did you manage to get to Cal State Fullerton? What was like the idea behind you joining Cal State Fullerton?
Well, that's actually kind of a strange story. This is 1972. I am in my senior year of high school. The Vietnam War is still there. There is a draft still. My number was 272. However, at that time, I was really looking at going into medicine. My father had gone to USC, and so I applied for a Navy NROTC scholarship to pay for the college. Lo and behold, I got the scholarship. The telegram arrived one day. Back then, they still had telegrams. Said, "Congratulations, contact USC. We're going to cover your expenses. Go for it." Next day arrives, new telegram. "I'm sorry, Mr. Purpura, we discovered that we've used up all of our eyesight waivers. If you'll cover your costs at USC for a year, we'll pick up the tab for the next 3. Well, not having $50,000 to $60,000, I had to drop to my fallback position, which was extremely cost-effective Cal State Fullerton. Back then, the state was really subsidizing the state university system. And I can make children cry today when I tell them that it was costing me, with books and parking pass, around $600 a year for my degree.
Are you serious? 600 bucks?
Yeah, 600 bucks. I was able to put myself through school working at McDonald's.
Our parking pass is like going to be 600 bucks a year.
Oh, yeah.
You got the entire tuition, parking pass, and books. Oh.
Yeah, so but remember this, at that time, this is before Prop 13 came out, and the state was very intelligently investing in the future of their citizens by making the education still an extremely good buy. So I ended up at Cal State Fullerton as my secondary one because I know I could afford to get in there. So that's how I got. Well, also my sister was there ahead of them, also me too, because my father had a situation. He would pay for the second 2 years of a private college or UCLA or something like that, but you had to go to Cal State Fullerton first, because back then you could transfer between sophomore and junior year. So my sister went there, then she transferred to UCLA that next year, but I ended up in Cal State and I started there. So I started Cal State with the goal of being a doctor. Then things changed.
And so how was it with you? Did you also plan to transfer, and were you like applying there?
No, because I knew that I could transfer. I didn't really want to go move out. I was basically covering my own expenses, and so it's easier for me to work here and work. So Cal State was okay. I had no issue with Cal State. The thing was, remember I was going biochem, pre-med.
Yeah.
Well, all that mattered back then was your GPA. And my STEM courses were really good, but I kept blowing off my general ed, so my GPA wasn't that good. Also, I was having some difficulty. You didn't find out why until years later, but I was having difficulty on exams, of panicking, and just ended up having issues there. But eventually, I made a decision that I should have been doing this for years. Engineering was really my main thrust. I tore things apart, made radios. I mean, I was your typical budding engineer. My father was an engineer also. I have a late uncle had 120 patents. So there's there's a large engineering strain in our family. So I changed engineering, where that's when the things really got interesting, because in my sophomore year, you now start taking your core classes. And the first thing I noticed was that I understood the theory, but in an exam, I would just start scrubbing off to the end and I just couldn't get it out. That summer, back then, Cal State Fullerton, our semesters were such that it would actually end just on Christmas Eve one year. And that year, I was expecting in my thermodynamics and heat transfer class, which are two core classes for mechanical engineer, I expected to get D's, which would have put my entire career into the crapper. I crawled into the building that Friday night where all your C-Witty number was there and your grade was posted. And I looked at it and I got B's in both classes. I literally cried. Both professors knew what I could do. They gave me the grade I had earned, not what I wasn't showing in the test. And those two people were a major reason I'm here today. If they had not had that level of compassion and that level of understanding of their students, and remember, at that time, when I graduated in 1976 with my bachelor's in mechanical, between graduate and undergraduate, we graduated 100 engineers.
Only 100 engineers between both of you.
Yes, and today we have 5,000 enrollment.
So what year was it that you changed to mechanical engineering from?
That was 73.
So that was just like 1 year after your
I just swapped my rounds. Okay, I'm going to be an engineer.
After you completed your bachelor's at Cal State Fullerton, so you completed that in 4 years, you went directly for your master's degree at Fullerton as well. You started working while completing your master's. So how was that like transition of completing your master's plus working at the same time?
Well, you have to remember, today, what I tell my mentees, you must have internships. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely critical. Luckily for me, between my junior year and senior year, I ended up as an intern at Hunt Wesson, reporting to the vice president of engineering and the chief engineer of the corporation. That was fun. It taught me a couple of things. I'm turned out to be actually relatively good at engineering, and more, remember, my first job was at McDonald's. My second job was at Disneyland, working as a cook at the Blue Bayou restaurant, cooking Monte Cristo sandwiches. Now, in this job, I was an engineering intern. I was flying up and down the coast of California with their central engineering team, which was their elite engineers who would fine-tune packing plants and everything and get an extra 1.5% profit or something. They were the best of the best. And that's when I started to find, I didn't even notice until later, that's when my talent came out. There was one time where I was up in Sacramento, and I'd been up there for a week and was flying back home. On the way out, I was walking past the assembly line. And I looked and says, what would happen if you did this, this, or that? Thought nothing of it and walked out. The next morning, I got a call. Bill, the vice president wants you in his office now. I walk in the office and there's Joe Monshine, the vice president, and Jake Hill, the chief engineer, says, Bill, what are you doing redesigning the assembly line up in Sacramento plant? Then they started laughing their heads off. They said, Bill, let me explain something to you. That hat you wore that said central engineering on it, that's 2 stars. You are equal in rank to the plant manager. They did not see a 21-year-old engineering student. All they saw was click heels and salute. By the way, it's a great idea. I told them to implement it. But you have to understand implied authority in the future. Mm-hmm. But that's when I found out the difference between being at the low level type of job that you had in college to being in the professional. And that became even more noticeable when I graduated.
So even after this master's, so what kind of like sparked the interest of getting a master's since you were already able to get like a good paying job like after your bachelor's degree?
I'm looking at a young man right now, you, and I look at people and I say, do you understand that 20 years from now, you'll be mid-career, but there'll be these other bright, intelligent, with new tools, new capabilities, things that you have missed because you worked over here now. You got to fend those people off. So there were 2 things going on here. Number one, I needed to prove to myself there wasn't a fluke that I got to my bachelor's. Mm-hmm. By getting my master's, I could convince myself, yes, I really did know engineering in my areas of expertise in thermo advanced heat transfer, power and energy was legitimate. At that point, I had also started to look at what I want to do in my life. And I had already been made a manager at age 28. And I discovered I'm a lousy manager. That was part of the personality setup I have. I just didn't have a good manager knows how to read what's going on, can interpret what the person's saying or not saying. They're compassionate. They have a second sense. They're managers like teachers are born. They're not taught. I could take anybody and say you can teach this class, but well, that might be that lousy teacher, and 95% of them are. No, I did find out though I was extremely good at managing projects. I was very good at the detail work of all the activities, keeping track of what's going on. I became what's known as a project engineer. And in our world, you had three tracks. You could be an engineer. I could design this and get to the elite level of this. I could be a manager. I'll manage this many people, or I could be a project engineer. I'm managing the resources, capital, proposals. And turns out each time you went up, pay was pretty much the same as a manager without the people.
So you said you got your MBA right after. So you got like 3 degrees back to back with
back to back, 11 years contiguous.
So what sparked that I want to get my MBA? You already are like high up on mechanical engineering. You got 7 years of experience there, but you still wanted to get another degree.
Well, I got the MBA. By the 7th year, I got the MBA. So I finished 3 years for the MSME, then 4 years for the MBA, because back then the seminars required if you didn't have an undergraduate in business, you had to go back and get it.
Oh.
And then they did the MBA program. And so part-time worked out to be 4 years. Now you can do it in a year and a half.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah, Cal State Fullerton has a lot of those accelerated master's programs where, I mean, it just lets us stay close to the school that we're familiar with and just get it done really easily.
Oh yeah, I tell everybody today I mentor both it used to be called the Halo, now it's the School of Business and Economics, and engineering. Mm-hmm. I mentor both organizations. The biggest thing there is because I actually can. I have the credentials in both fields. And that was one thing I did determine that, as I said, when you have an MBA, you have a master's in engineering, and you walk into a room and they don't know who you are. You're the pro from Dover they sent in to figure out what's wrong. And let's say it's a bunch of engineers. They think you're a finance weenie. So they start blowing smoke about the technology. I just tell them, first of all, I have a master's and X patents and X BTech conference papers. You're not fooling me with you're an engineer? Yeah. P6.
Because they just thought you had your MBA, that's it.
Yeah. So next time I'm into another organization, we're trying to look at the bid for a proposal. And I'm saying, look, you got a problem here, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you're just a tech weenie. What do you know? Well, I do have an MBA, and I also run an $1 million investment fund on the outside. So I have some idea about finance. Shall we get back on tech? Oh, hell.
It was you just have the best of both worlds. You have the best of both worlds.
I had street cred in both worlds. And at the same time, you have to maintain it in both worlds. I had to keep my technology. Every time I got more patents, I gave more technical conference papers that maintained me at their equivalence for a very senior engineer. Same thing with business. I got called in to audit a program here, or find out or save a proposal here, or recover something there. So that kept that side of the house. It took a lot of work, but it paid off.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about what you do on campus currently. Well, one, like you mentioned before, you run a company called Dargon Development, and that kind of deals a lot with funds, and it's a multi-million-dollar investment.
I just shut down our investment fund about a half a year ago.
Oh, you did?
I decided I was enough of that. But Dargon was one of the things I tell my students is that you always have to have a side gig.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in aerospace, where in the 70s, the aerospace industry here took an 80% layoff. 80. Can you imagine what
That
that
is
did to the
insane. Yeah.
economy here? It was staggering. All those high paid jobs, and most of them took 2 years to find another job, and even then they had to change careers. It was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up with that, watched my father dodge layoff after layoff after layoff, and I knew I had to have something else. So a friend of his, George Messenger, who is 170, 180 IQ, he was one of the inventors of transistors and things like that. Self-made multimillionaire investments in real estate, but he needed somebody to uh, basically mechanize the algorithms he was using for doing option trading. And he is a computer. It took me 3 years to teach him how to transfer a file into a floppy, complete computer code. So I spent on our an activity. I did all of the finances, all of the accounting, all of the taxes, all the calculations, probabilities, all that. I did all that activity. But once I got to the point, I said, well, I just don't want to live on the computer all the day every morning and watch the market and go through the stress of the environment. So we just close that down. But with that umbrella company, when we had rental houses, that came under that. When I had consulting work, that came under that. Uh, when my wife and daughter decided to do some other business, it all came. So by having that, I was able to take massive deductions. I was also able to take the income we were getting and put it into a separate IRA. So I have IRAs for my job, I have Roth IRAs for my investments, and then I have it's called a KEO account for my small business. And having all those ways to not hide but remove money from the tax,
Reallocate. Yeah.
reallocate, was a big reason for why I'm comfortable today.
So not only did it make you money directly, but it helped you save money in the long run as well.
Absolutely, and because my original CPA for years was an ex-IRS agent, and then I had other CPAs over the years. But I would go and do anything that was legal.
That's pretty interesting. So going back to Cal State Fullerton, I wanted to ask a question. You're doing quite a bit over there. First, you're on the board of directors for the Alumni Association.
But yes, I was on the board of directors. Before I was in the board of directors, I was Boeing's liaison,
Yeah.
both engineering and business, where I was mentoring. I also arranged to get materials into the engineering department. When I retired, I just sort of transitioned onto that full time. I mentor and sponsor teams on the engineering side. Either I want something designed, I'll pay for it myself and have them do it, or I mentor teams doing that. I'm now mentoring a multi-university team working on an exoskeleton design that's Long Beach, Cal State Fullerton, and San Luis, I think San Jose. I'm going to be the programmatic side. And that's because it took me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, to say, look, you're doing these projects, but you're not taking the program side of it. You're not managing it correctly. And so now I've been working in some of their big teams on the programmatics. Now they want me on this multiple team. And so that's engineering. Over in business economics for years now. I've been mentoring their consulting teams. People come to Cal State, they pay a couple thousand, they get a study done. Well, I usually cherry pick the team I want. Cherry pick the project I want, and it gives me the challenges I need. So I spend my time over business economics. I spend my time over engineering. I volunteer as the archery coach, particularly in compound, but more of the team manager. I basically fund a lot of it. I buy equipment for them. I write the grants for them to get money, but they actually run the club themselves. But I kind of handle the infrastructure in the background. I sponsor scholarships. My wife and I offer multiple scholarships in both engineering as well as over the business department. Um, I think I've now been brought on to another uh, business department has is their a high achiever program. I now been officially brought on there for mentoring some of their exact students. I got a new mentee there. I teach a class in resume writing to a variety of professors over the semester. I've been now teaching a class in project management over in some of the other programs. So I basically flit around a lot, but I got to do something because I'm bored out of my mind because I retired way too early.
But why is it important for you to give back to like Cal State Fullerton? Like out of all the things that you could possibly do, you do so much for Cal State Fullerton. So like why is it like ingrained in you to give back so much?
Partially because I owe a lot of what I am to Dr. Edward Sal and Dr. Krishnamurthy in engineering because of what they did allowed me to become an engineer. Ed Sal was my mentor in my master's program. He was probably the most important person in my life, or one of the most important over my entire career. He saw something in me, and because of that, I was able to advance. I've always had a tremendous feeling of gratitude for the people in my career who helped me or guided me or gave me a break when I didn't think I was ever going to get one there. And that to me requires significant loyalty and gratitude, but also means pay it forward. Someone did that for me. I must do that for somebody else. It's not ethical, it's not honorable to have someone do all that for you and not take on another engineer, mentor, loan money to people, help people get jobs. Anything that I can do is because I owe it to somebody else because somebody did something for me. And again, it all started at Cal State Fullerton. And I spent more time at Cal State Fullerton than I ever did in my high school or elementary school.
All right, we're going to start asking him the quick fire questions and getting his opinions on some controversial topics. So Bill, these are very controversial. Like it depends on how you answer them. We might have to end the podcast here if they're not right answers.
Go for it.
All right, the first one being coffee versus tea.
Since I weaned myself off of caffeine decades ago, it's tea, but it's only decaffeinated.
I agree with you there. So what was better, undergrad or graduate school?
Graduate school.
So math or language arts? And this is an easy answer.
It's an interesting thing. Math, I'm not good at math, but I'm good with technology.
Oh, okay.
I'm not good at language in writing, but I'm good in language in verbal.
So phone call or text message? I think you would prefer a phone call on this one.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
let me qualify that. Text, if you're trying to just give me a piece of information and I can glance at it and not have to worry about getting a long call.
Yeah.
Each has their use. Communication must be by phone. But if I want something immediate, the address I need to drive to, great. I don't want to get into, great. I glance at it, put in the GPS, and I'm gone.
Yeah.
So each for its use.
So a horror movie or a comedy movie?
Comedy.
You love comedies. What's your favorite comedy movie?
Well, first of all, you have to look at the works of Mel Brooks. Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles are two of the greatest ones out there. You could look at some of the great screwball comedies of the 30s and 40s. You could look at, I like comedy that's not based around people being degraded, insulted, or humiliated. That's not comedy.
That's cheap comedy. It's a very cheap comedy.
Yeah, that's abuse.
It's equivalent to like a jump scare in like a horror movie. It's just
exactly. What you're looking for is something where you set up a personality situation, something where people forget the inventor of stand-up comedy was Jack Benny. He was the first one to not only do stand-up audience and do comedy, though Will Rogers did sort of it too. It was part of his act. But Jack Benny also was the first one who had a personality. He had this persona of this real cheap person, the most famous laugh that ever was in radio, where Jack is supposed to walk along and a robber comes out and pulls out a gun and says, "Your money or your life?" Dead pause. Dead pause. The guy says, I just said you're running your life. He says, I'm thinking. That was just so aligned with the personality that he portrayed that people could immediately understand why he would take the time to think what's more important, his life or his money. That is, if you want brilliant comedy, Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Oh my God. He can riff on anything. People, Jeff Dunham, some of his stuff is actually a little too insulting in some of the deal, but he is so good on maintaining so many personalities. I saw him live, and live he's even funnier.
That was like the quick fire. We just want to end it off with advice that you would give to students. So, well, the first thing I want to ask is like, what does success mean to you? And like, since you've done so many things, you've done the patents, you've gotten 3 degrees from Cal State Fullerton, you went back and got some certificates. What does success, like, where is the end goal for you?
The ability to have something to give back and the ability to be able to give back. That means that you had to develop a level of experience and expertise that people want for you to share. You have to have your health so you're able to participate and communicate and actively do that. And you need a level of wealth that you can do or fund or be able to enable yourself to do those activities. I can travel places, I can fund scholarships, and I've got enough money that I won't outlive my money. That's so my success is to be able to be able to do those 3 things.
So it's just like earning anything or just working on yourself in order to be able to give back, have enough health, and have enough wealth to just give back.
So you have all of the opportunities. I know a lot of people who could do 2 of those, but they can't afford to drive, or they're financially in today's environment. I have friends, dual income families, and suddenly they both got furloughed.
Yeah.
That's huge because you lived a lifestyle. That was one differential between my wife and I, was because of my growing up in the aerospace. We never lived off of more than 1 income, even though we had 2.5. So it gave us a lot of buffer.
I see.
And buffer is important in life.
And that's kind of like the main important thing that people don't realize is, yeah, your lifestyle is great when you're working, but what happens, like, again, like we were mentioning before, like a black swan moment where any minute, like something can just like go down. And then people who like in March were like, oh, this is just a virus. Oh, maybe I'm being like furloughed for a bit. Next thing you know, laid off, and now they're collecting unemployment 7-8 months later, still not knowing when they're going to get a job and what's happening to their job. So I mean, like, it's kind of just have to like prepare for like the worst always. And then like we were talking before, prior to like starting the podcast, you kind of just have to prepare for that.
Yeah. If you've got to have 6 months salary in a cash equivalent. It might be a bond fund being 0.5%, but still it's something that is worth value. And until you have that buffer, you don't have options. If you have that buffer, you're not going to drop everything, grab the first thing that comes around, which may stick you to a lousy job that you are going to be stuck in the rest of your life type deal. Or if something bad happens, you have the ability to survive it. And if you just live, the first thing you do when you graduate, you go out and lease a BMW. I know some people, when they got their MBA, they wanted to show the world they've really arrived, so they go lease a BMW. I own a BMW. I own one.
Yeah.
Not only did I own one, but I was smart enough to buy an executive lease car, or an executive card. It was used by vice president for exactly 3 months, with 3,000 miles on it. And I was able to get that car for $12,000 off list. And it actually never even been registered yet. So when I buy cars, I buy them intelligently. I don't trade in when you're a lease, you're on a perpetual payment because you turn in every 2 or 3 years and you're back on that treadmill. I was paid off after a year and a half. I was going to pay for cash, but they offered me 0%, 0.5% financing. I was making a lot more of that in my other events, so hell, take the loan.
Yeah, and I know there's a new program with smartphones as well. Like with I think with Samsung, I think Apple has it as well, where every like 12 months you can upgrade your phone. So you're constantly just paying for a new phone every year. And it doesn't like sound like much until you realize 600, $700 a year just to get like incremental upgrades. Whereas you would save so much more maybe every 2 or 3 years. And same thing with rent as well, just
See,
perpetual.
you got to be careful about rent because the entire financial model, a lot of people looked at their house as being their retirement. And then when we had the crash in 2008 and property values dropped 30-40%, when my mother-in-law passed, we had ended up doing a reverse mortgage for her about 2 years beforehand. And at that time, the house was worth $240,000 in Las Vegas. When she passed, we were offered $80,000
Only.
only. The real estate in Las Vegas had cratered so badly, it was basically a disaster. And so, if you were counting on that for your retirement, you're going to sell that house, and then suddenly 2/3 of your savings are gone.
Yeah.
And the millennials today, and this new generation, is not as prone to buying a house because the financial advantages aren't there. You're not getting the appreciation because you don't have a growing population and you don't have the middle class has been decimated. You have $1 million house you want to buy. What does that mean? You have to have upfront the down payment and closing costs and other stuff, $250,000. Means you $750,000 for mortgage. Okay. Rule of thumb, 1/3 income. So do you have in hand $250,000 in cash and a household income of $250,000 a year? You don't. You're 30 years old. Okay. Well, don't start looking for houses in Newport Beach. Don't think about living in San Francisco. Of course, you can go live in Mississippi. You can buy a house there for $80,000. So it's all back to, you try to tell people the economics. You only have $1 million houses when you have people who can afford a $1 million house.
I see, yeah. And then this kind of goes back into like what you were saying with the whole not having like a 5-year plan, but instead of like thinking things in like the short term as well.
Always look where you're going, but know where you're going to. Always have an ejection spot, a safe spot that you're. One of the reasons I never got laid off for the four previous times is whenever there's an announcement that something's bad, what happens? Everybody gets in the group. Oh my God, what's happening? I'm out the door. I'm already gone talking to people because even though they're going to lay off X, there's always a couple of jobs that they still need to fill. You get that, grab it, hold on. Everybody else goes off the Titanic, and you're in the lifeboat.
It's just like the actions you take prior, like, well, everyone else is panicking, you just take an action, and then your job is done at that point. Like you're like secured. You're secured at that point.
You've got to have your backup plans, contingency plans always thought out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, while you're trying to think, the people already have them, have already acted. They want your opportunity. There is no luck. There's only when opportunity meets preparation.
And this is like advice that would go to like general students. And now I'm wondering like what advice would you give to like students specifically since you've got a degree in engineering and business? What like advice would you give to those types of students?
I would tell all the students, no matter what their degree, what their program, they need to get everything they can out of their time at the university. Join clubs, participate, go work with other organizations, become a much broader, much more capable person. Don't be Johnny One Note. Don't just think I'm just a guitar player, or I'm a history and medieval history. No, because that you have locked yourself into something.
Hmm.
Open yourself to opportunities as well as to different people. Learn, the more you travel, the more people you meet, the more tolerant you become.
Just like expand your horizons, just become as like well-rounded as you can be.
Expand the people you talk to.
Hmm.
You might be a really good engineer or a really good business person, but other parts of your life you need to know about the arts. You need to know about history. You need to know about travel. You need to be my parents were that type of people that I could drop them into any social event and they would just simply merge in and talk. They traveled the world for 30 odd years. They're intelligent. They were well educated. They were cultured. They knew art. They knew music. They knew literature. They knew movies. So they could find something common to talk to somebody about. And they were interested in other people. I can remember back in the late 60s, we went up to Yosemite. This is the middle of the summer of love and all that.
Hmm.
And there were my parents sitting around a campfire with a bunch of college students, laughing and talking, enjoying wine and talking to them. There was like 15, 20-year age difference, but they were able to interface with them. And these students really appreciated them. I've always looked at my parents as being amazing that way, that
Yeah,
people always remember them and they always, thought of them as being really good people to talk to.
that's what like I kind of try and be like that. I tell a lot of people that as well. When you take like GEs and you're just taking like other things that are outside of your like specialty, just go for it, embrace it. You never know when you're gonna like need those talking points or just know those types of people who are outside of your specific field. And a lot of people like, especially I know a lot of people in engineering, they don't want to like expand their horizons. They know what they're good at and just like doing it. But if you just try something else, you don't know like what experience you could get from it. And just like in the long run, it is so much more
I
beneficial.
feel so bad for people who have never read the classics. By the I mean everything, like H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, Twain. I mean, we're talking the books for ages.
Yeah.
If they haven't seen the really good movies, the ones that people talk about, if they don't recognize certain musical scores, if they haven't heard, uh, I mean, I'll tell you right now, the Beatles will be studied in college 100 years from now, like Beethoven and Mozart, because they were so iconic, so new, original that if you don't recognize a Beatles song, you're not very civilized or cultured.
Makes sense. And so to end it off, I'm just wondering what your favorite memory was at Cal State Fullerton. Could be from like your grad during your MBA, or it could be from your undergrad.
I think it was when I got my master's in engineering, I didn't go for the ceremony. But when I got my MBA, I did. I did it for only one reason, to smugly walk up the stairs to get it wearing two stoles,
What were the stoles that you were wearing?
one for engineering and one for business.
Oh, so you still were wearing your engineering one.
You can wear both.
Oh, okay, okay, I see.
And that was me telling the world, yeah, I did it. I got a master's in engineering. I got a master's in business.
Hmm.
People ask, well, didn't you get a doctorate? I said, no, there is no reason for me to be super expert here. It's more important for me to be very strong here and here.
Yeah.
I never would have gotten as far as I got in my career with a doctorate in either one of those.
Hmm. But just having like the masters again, like we mentioned with the instead of being like the master of one trade, why not just be very good at both or like at
Right.
multiple other things? To end it off, I was just wondering if you were on our Titan Pro network.
Yes, I am on it.
So Bill is on the Titan Pro network. So if you ever want to reach out to an alumni, faculty, staff, or other students, Titan Pro network is like the perfect way to go ahead and do that because it's just like a family of Titans where you can ask for help, you can give help. It's just so easy to connect with other people and just talk to them about anything that you need. So let's say you're an engineering student or you're trying to complete your MBA. Bill is here and he is a perfect candidate to talk to. And if you liked anything on the podcast, I'm sure he'll be more than happy to help and or just talk to you about anything that you talk to me here. So thank you, Bill, so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Well, thank you. Really enjoyed it.